Yeah, when I come to your face. When I come on your face. It's time for spooky stories.
The night was heavy with the weight of a full moon hanging low in the ink-black sky, lighting up the faces of 4 friends huddled together in a single room, far removed from the world outside. Hunter, JT, Cameron, and Nick had congregated at Cameron's house for what was intended to be a night of laughter, video games, and the kind of camaraderie that only a sleepover can bring. However, as boys are wont to do, they soon found themselves play wrestling on Cameron's bed. A flurry of limbs and laughter. "I can't believe you fell for that," JT laughed, his chest heaving in between gasps, a pillow in hand as he inadvertently shoved it into Hunter's face. As Hunter wrestled back, a sudden ear-piercing crack rang through the air, echoing painfully against the walls. "What was that?" Nick exclaimed, eyes wide. He'd been sitting in the corner, arms crossed over his bony frame, ever the comedian, poised to diffuse any tension with a joke. Instead, he felt the mood shift, a chill crawling over the laughter like a mist. Cameron, who had been staring wide-eyed at his own wall, blurted out, "Dude, you just put a hole in my wall." It was true. The wall now boasted a jagged gash, exposing ancient wood and bits of crumbling plaster. Hunter gulped nervously, knowing that Cameron's mum was strict about such things, like the stealth policy against any form of destruction in her home. "Guys, we need to fix this," he stuttered, glancing toward the door as if expecting thunderous footsteps to storm down the hall any moment. "I didn't mean to, I just thought," JT began, defensive but now aware of the rising tension. But it was Nick who decided to poke fun. "Hey, it's just a little hole. We could call it a Cameron's portal to hell or something. Get a good laugh at this." Despite the humor, Cameron's face twisted into a grimace. "Shut up, Nick. We need to—" A low, grinding noise interrupted him, emerging from behind the hole as if the wall had voices of its own. The boys exchanged fearful glances. The walls of this old house had secrets. They could feel it in their bones. The hole shifted slightly wider, as though something was struggling to break through. A dark passage that seemed to beckon them closer. Curiosity replaced fear, and JT took a hesitant step forward, crouching down to peer inside. "Can you even see anything?" murmured Hunter, now feeling the prickle of ice along his spine, pulling his shoulders tight. JT's head disappeared into the darkness. "No." "Wait," his voice trailed off. "Say something, man," Hunter urged, his stomach curling in apprehension. "I think—" JT hesitated. "There's something in here." Before anyone could question him, Cameron pushed past JT, undeterred despite the growing dread in the pit of his stomach. "I'll check it out. I'm not scared." But what greeted him sent a jolt through him, a long, narrow concrete corridor with metal bars lining the edges. Distant sounds echoed faintly, muffled cries and rattling chains. "Guys, there's a—" Cameron stepped back, but his foot slipped on the ledge, sending him tumbling into the void. "Cameron!" they shouted in unison, the amusement of the night evaporating into thin air. Hunter dropped to his knees, peering into the abyss, but something else swallowed his thoughts. A figure emerged from the shadows, a lean, gaunt man, eyes wide with terror, face streaked with dirt. "Help me," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "Who are you?" Nick shouted. "He's a—" Before Cameron could finish, the man lunged forward, shaking the bars of his cell. "They keep me down here. Please, you have to let me out." Panic surged as Cameron clawed back, scrambling on the floor. "My mum, she doesn't allow anyone to leave." Twin shadows flitted past them, the rumble of footsteps echoing above. "She's here," the gaunt man wailed, eyes wild with despair. "You must go." But in that moment, the reality of their situation swallowed them whole. The boys never truly expected to discover a dungeon of despair beneath Cameron's bedroom. Nor did they foresee that Cameron's mom, kind and disarming on the surface, was the keeper of this dark secret. Then came the footsteps, The slow creaking of the door and Cameron's gulp echoed louder than the approaching terror. "You have to go. She will never forgive you." As their breaths quickened, they realized their deepest fear wasn't just the wrath of Cameron's mom discovering the hole in the wall. It was the truth that lay beyond it. The fear of becoming the next prisoners in a dungeon, locked away for eternity, just like the man before them. "No!" Cameron cried out, heart racing as the figure rushed forward, desperation clinging to him like a shroud of dread. In the shadows, a silhouette appeared. Cameron's mother stood poised at the entrance, a knowing smile dancing across her lips. "Boys," she said, venom dripping from every syllable, "what have you done?" In that instant, the darkness swallowed them whole, laughter reduced as Cameron's mom ate the boys and picked them out of her teeth with Nick's bony arm.
The laughter echoed through Cameron's dimly lit room as the 8 friends sprawled across the floor, energetic and clueless, their minds racing with the thrills of a late-night sleepover. A game of hide-and-seek morphed into a chaotic round of pillow fights, and when the distinct flick of the light switch plunged them into darkness, the whoops and shrieks heightened, a thrilling mix of fear and exhilaration that wrapped around them like a gossamer web. "Let's huddle on the bed," Nick squeaked, burying himself under a pile of blankets. Meanwhile, Donato continued to joke, "I bet the monster under the bed is just begging for a selfie." His playful remark was met with a chorus of chuckles, but a faint rustle from beneath the bed rapidly snatched their attention. "I swear I heard something," Nick murmured, his voice shaky, eyes scanning the shadows. "It's probably just Cameron trying to freak us out." To everyone's surprise, Cameron jumped in, pretending to be terrified. "What if it really is a monster? It could be hungry for—" Before he could finish, a sudden flurry erupted. Pillows flew off the bed, shrouded in chaos, as someone beneath tangled limbs threw them aside. Hunter stumbled backward, surprised. "Guys, this is just a joke, right?" But then, with a quick and violent snap, a box fan was hurled from beneath the bed. The sickening thud as it collided with Michael's skull silenced the room. Staggering, he clutched his head, eyes rolling back, before he collapsed with a thud that swallowed the laughter whole. "Michael!" The collective horror rushed through them like a wave. Nick was right. It wasn't a game anymore. Then the haunting melody of an old FNAF theme began to play, its innocent notes twisted into a disturbing serenade. Panic ignited, and the boys climbed atop the bed in a frenzied huddle, trying to discern the threat lurking beneath them. The tension was suffocating. "We have to figure out who's down there," JT exclaimed, voice shaking, glancing from boy to boy with increasing suspicion. The next sounds were primal. One by one, the room was invaded by horror. First, a hand sliced up from under the bed, fingers jagged as they caught Nick's ankle, dragging him screaming towards the shadows. A flash of crimson spilled across the floor as the sudden silence of a gasp replaced the memory of his voice. They scarcely had time to scream. "I think we need to get out of here," Nick wailed, peeking out from under the blanket. "No! Stay!" JT screamed, though his voice cracked. As Nick dared to look, he caught a glimpse of crimson mingled with the dust under the bed, a hand partially sticking out, a limb that was broken and twisted at an impossible angle. One by one, they felt something odd beneath them. Nick's terrified eyes bulged as they realized they were out of options. "What about Neil? He knows karate," Hunter shouted, his mind racing for hope. Neil, shaken yet still cocky, jumped from the bed, summoning what bravery remained. "Stand back, boys. I'll show whatever this is who's boss," he bellowed, attempting to sound brave despite his quivering hands. With a summoning breath, Neil leaped to the floor, landing unsteadily, adrenaline fueling his bravado. He swung wildly, almost crashing into Donato in the chaos. The futility of bravado shrank when a blade shot up from the abyss, slicing through Neil's stomach like butter. Blood sprayed in a grotesque arc, his scream transforming into a gurgled whimper as he crumpled to the ground. A hand came out of the abyss and then proceeded to rip his eyes and ears off and throw them around the room. In horror, Nick James clawed at the sheets, trying to make a fortress of blankets around himself. "Get back! It's a trap!" But it was futile as his splashing blood illuminated the room when a dark shadow emerged, its form barely recognizable. With feral strength, it yanked Nick down, the last fleeting screams melding with the chaotic wake left behind. Amid the mayhem, Donato tried to crack a joke, but the terror in his voice was unmistakable. "Okay, so how do we turn off the fan?" His laughter echoed unnaturally until a grip snatched him, pulling him violently from the grasp of safety. With one ruthless yank, each limb became disconnected from its owner, and gore splattered across the walls like a grotesque piece of artwork, colors blending in a devilish mural. JT and Hunter were the last left, hearts hammering in sync. "We need to get help," JT pleaded. "This isn't a game anymore, you moron. We're going to die," Hunter screamed, a primal fear clawing at his throat. The music swelled around them, wrapping them in a diabolical embrace as they watched in horror, knees trembling. Hunter, in a desperate bid, lunged desperately toward the door, but something unseen yanked him down hard, tearing his arm off on JT's grasp. In an instant, he hit the floor and exploded into a million pieces, covering the room. "Hunter!" JT cried, but it was too late. The laughter, now uncontrollable, seeped from beneath the bed, echoing through the horror-stricken air. The room was now a graveyard of humanity. Bodies lay sprawled in twisted poses of agony, all ignorance having long faded. It was just JT now, heart pounding with the knowledge that there was no escape. He had questioned friends, but who could he ever blame? With trembling limbs, JT was alone now, trembling and questioning all he believed about friendship and safety. "Cameron, is that you?" he whimpered, the irony of his question sinking like a stone in water. But Cameron never answered, for he was never on the bed. He'd been under it the whole time, relishing every gruesome act he'd committed. In a furious attempt to fight back, he fell to the floor, scrambling for a weapon, but none existed, a mere child with a heart full of terror. He glanced under the bed. Silence. Then soft chuckles from beneath the bed followed, creeping and dark. "You have no idea how this will end, JT." Cameron's voice slithered through the shadows. But before JT could respond, razor-sharp fingers shot out, claws lacerating through the fabric of his shirt and into flesh. He screamed as his vision darkened, warmth pooling around him. Each boy picked off like pieces on a chessboard, all leading to this. A ritual, a game all along, laughter echoing through the empty space when the morning sun broke. With each slain friend, the story would whisper through the town. Night one, they would say, the first night of many. The only player still alive had always been the master of the game. JT, Max, and Bryce settled into their chairs, shadows from their desk lamps curling around them as they logged onto Discord. The anticipation hung thick in the air, a cocktail of excitement and dread. They were about to dive into Omi TV, a chat platform that paired random users for video chats. Their mission? To get a stranger to dance. It was a ritual in their friend group, an absurdly competitive pastime that also doubled as a test of social prowess. "Tonight's the night," JT declared, his perfectionist nature brimming over with enthusiasm. He was known for hitting the quota with surgical precision, charming estranged souls into spontaneous performances. Max, ever the cynic, rolled his eyes. He was new to this game, carrying an ironclad self-respect that often kept him from asking the strangers to dance. "I can't believe you guys take this so seriously," Max said, leaning back and crossing his arms. "Just give it a try, man. How hard can it be?" Bryce chimed in, his confidence unshakable. He flicked through the app, ready to score another win. The trio hit the start button at the same time. Faces flickered onto their screens, some giggling, others wide-eyed with curiosity. An endless series of mundane conversations ensued, punctuated by awkward silences and laughter that faded as the strangers disconnected. "Next!" Bryce shouted, amusement dancing in his eyes. He flicked again, and suddenly a shadowy figure appeared on his screen. The quality was bad, but the silhouette was undeniably peculiar. The stranger wore a hood, obscuring their features. Bryce felt a chill crawl down his spine, but brushed it off. "Hey there, can you dance?" he asked, his tone cheery as he brandished the question like a weapon. Instead of answering, the stranger tilted their head, revealing their face in a moment of pixelated clarity. It was a face devoid of emotion, pale and almost haunting. Bryce's chuckle fell flat. "What's wrong with you? Come on, show us some moves," he pressed, now feeling a distinct urge to end the call. The figure's silence grew oppressive, stretching the moment into an uncomfortable eternity. JT, eager as always, leaned in, encouraging Bryce with a conspiratorial smile. "You can do it! Hit the quota!" I need to pass," Bryce stuttered. "Pass? No way, you have to push through." JT's words cut like a knife, but there was an edge of fear hidden beneath his encouragement. Max scoffed at the exchange but felt a pit in his stomach. Something about the stranger made his palms sweat, a nebulous horror threading through the banter. He cleared his throat, watching the clock ticking away their time. With a growing sense of dread, the pacing continued. Then the unthinkable happened. The stranger's face twisted, shadows flickering across her. Tossed the screen as if reality itself was being disrupted. "Do you want to see? Do you want to see?" The voice came from the figure, no longer sounding human, curling around Bryce's consciousness like smoke. On impulse, he clicked, "Disconnect." "3," JT yelled, still full of enthusiasm. "2, 1, go!" Max, feeling strangely compelled even amidst his fear, took the plunge. "Let's keep going." He clicked to connect with another random stranger, but the moment the video loaded, horror gripped him. The same stranger appeared again, but now they were different. Eyes hollow, skin stretched too tightly over their skull. "You wanted to dance?" they croaked, and Max, who had always possessed a firm self-respect, felt it shatter. The digitized connection flickered violently. Frames froze, broke apart, and reformed. JT watched in fascination, the dread lingering uncomfortably in the back of his mind. Each of them faced the same figure, disfigured further yet again. "I can't take this," Max shouted. "I'll pass." The moment passed silently, replaced by a single gut-wrenching sound. The crack of bone echoed through their speakers. "Look!" Bryce shouted, his voice laced with panic. The screen lit up with grotesque imagery. One by one, the head of every stranger they'd encountered exploded, mist filling the spaces where human features once were, warm brain matter splattering against the screens. Their gasps echoed in the empty rooms, minds racing with dread. They're all dead. JT looked at Bryce, eyes round with disbelief. His perfection was stealing his consciousness as quickly as it was retracting his sanity. The hooded stranger, with blood still clinging to their pixelated form, cackled darkly. Quota met. They hissed, voice turning into a cacophony, shattering the silence of the call. Each disconnection became nothing but another extinguished life. Their laughter, too traditional, too gleeful. The horror drugged the air thick, caging them within the echo of a single truth. Their obsessions held the potential to consume them whole, driving peers into an abyss they never sought, locked away forever in hellish games of their making. JT, Max, and Bryce never again would try and hit the quota. In fact, they never again touched a computer. The house was alive with laughter as Ernesto shuffled through a galaxy of honey packets, his eyes glinting with a mischievous glow. "Okay, everyone, let's spice this up a bit." He waved the packets in the air like confetti. "Let's play hide and seek in the dark, but we all take one of these bad boys to enhance the fun." His friends exchanged excited glances, the idea spreading like wildfire. They were all in. Ernesto's dog, Bean, was sprawled lazily on the floor, oblivious to the impending chaos. The friends paired up in excitement while Hunter raised a hand. "I'm not hiding with anyone. I'm finding the perfect spot." "You'll need it," Neil bragged, flipping through the air with a backflip that barely missed a lampshade. "I'll take on Bean if he finds me." "Let's just not die, okay?" Cameron whispered nervously, glancing at Luca, who smirked, unimpressed by the antics. In a darkened corner of the living room, CJ sat, fiddling with his phone, missing the drama unfolding around him. "What's the worst that could happen?" he said, glancing up with a disinterested shrug. "Don't be a dumbass," Jaden chimed in. He plucked his guitar, filling the air with pulsating chords while Ernesto's laughter rang out, a bit too manic for comfort. "Ready or not, here we come," shouted Ernesto, his voice echoing through the gloom as he threw a handful of honey packets into the shadows. And just like that, the game began. The friends scattered, racing for their hiding spots amid the laughter that reverberated eerily against the walls. JT ducked behind the curtain, adrenaline coursing through him as he dared to challenge the beast. He would show everybody that he wasn't afraid. Hunter squeezed into the cramped space beneath the stairs, heart pounding, breaths quickening with excitement and dread. Every creak of the house was amplified in the darkness, fueling the anticipation of fear. Meanwhile, unaware of the dark fate that was about to unfold, Bean had managed to find his way into the box of honey packets. Before long, he was palpably charged, bounding through the house with renewed vigor, his senses heightened. Ernesto, however, had consumed more than his fair share of honey and was now spiraling into a surreal, exaggerated frenzy of quirky paranoia. "I need to hump someone," he yelled, weaving through shadows, agitated by his twisted mind. The first scream shattered the night like glass. It was Michael. He had chosen a spot behind the couch but had been discovered by Bean, who couldn't contain his primal instincts. The dog lunged, teeth sinking into Michael's leg before the world exploded into chaos. "What the hell?" JT yelled, emerging from his hiding spot. The laughter that once bounced off walls was replaced by strangled gasps and shouts of horror. Michael's leg being chewed off and played with like another one of Bean's dog toys. "Run!" Cameron screamed, scrambling towards the door. But it was too late. Neil back-flipped into view, his earlier bravado nowhere to be found. Instead, he stumbled over Michael's fallen body, terror draining any semblance of cool from his demeanor. Neil strutting with confidence, only to be met by a rogue Bean who lunged and clamped down on Neil's arm, ripping through flesh like it was tissue paper. Shock paralyzed the house, a macabre silence punctuated by Neil's agonized screams. "Dude," CJ began, but he didn't finish as he found himself lunging away from Bean, who, now fully feral, had switched into survival mode as Bean bit into his calf and threw him to the ground, killing him almost instantly. "Get out! I'm gonna kill that dog," JT declared, charging toward the beast with nothing but blind determination. His every pulse screamed danger as he surged forward. "Are you insane?" Jaden yelled, his guitar now silent. "That thing's gone wild." But JT would not back down. He lunged, wresting a chair from the floor and swinging it with desperate urgency, but Bean was too fast, leaping towards JT, biting his hair and dragging him around the blood-covered floors into a guest room. Blood-hurdling screams came haunting from inside the room. Everyone just watched as JT was being ripped apart limb by limb in the room. But suddenly, JT's screams came to an abrupt halt. Ernesto stood frozen, staring wide-eyed at the carnage he'd unknowingly unleashed. As the honey coursed through Bean's veins, an insanity he'd never imagined took charge. Tears streaked down his face, an odd comfort in knowing no one trusted him. Their mistrust mirrored his own. "Let's go," Cameron urged again, but they were all running out of time. Bean, being set off by the sound of Cameron's scream, came sprinting outside of the room and chomped on Cam's heel, tearing off his Achilles, rendering Cameron unable to walk, let alone stand. He fell fast to the floor, banging his head on a nearby counter. Hunter, after just witnessed half of his friends die, thought of a plan to try and stun Bean. Getting up on the kitchen counter, he grabbed the nearest bottles of alcohol that they've been drinking that night and throw it all on the dog, hoping to scare it off. As the dog, drenched in alcohol, ran around in a murder frenzy, gnawing every lifeless body, eating the flesh and humping it afterwards. With Hunter on top of the counter, Cam half dead on the floor, Lucas still synonymous to the whole event, and Jaden and Ernesto sitting on the couch. Nick, hiding just a room across from the room JT was brutally killed, had a plan to trap himself in the room as he called for 911. "I'll light a fire on the trash can and keep it at the door of the room so Bean doesn't come in." Jaden, still sitting on the couch, tried and hit the dog with his guitar. "Get back. I can play 4 songs on this thing, you know." The dog being slammed with the first hit from the guitar, hurtling Bean into a wall, putting a hole straight to Nick's room. Nick, just having started the fire, watched as Bean, covered in alcohol, flew straight into the room, setting ablaze to everything, the fire engulfing everything it touched, killing Nick instantly. Ernesto watched as his house slowly came overcome by the flames, a lone trail of alcohol that dripped from Bean lead straight to Cameron's handicapped body. Cameron letting off howling screams as he watched as his body got engulfed by flames. Hunter, who plunged off the counter trying to stomp out the fire on Cameron, got met with Bean, who dove out of the fire completely covered in flames and clipped Hunter's throat, bursting his Adam's apple and ripping out his vocal cords. Jaden's guitar, drenched in Bean's alcohol, bursted into a frenzy of flames, covering Jaden's arms and head. Unable to see, he swung violently in hopes of striking Bean and putting an end to this mayhem. He swung once, knocking Ernesto's head into the wall, putting a hole in it with his brains exposed, and his next couple of swings would fall upon Hunter, who got hit blow after blow, unable to warn Jaden of who he was hitting. due to him being unable to speak. Only bloody gargles came out, "Glargle blah bashal." "Take that, you stupid dog." Bean still chewing on Hunter's Adam apple like some kind of chew toy. Decided to hump on Cameron. Somehow, after being handicapped and set aflame, Cameron was still alive under all that burnt skin. Cameron woke up and found his mouth was burnt shut and his eyes molded into his skin. All he could do was sit there as Bean humped him. Still being massacred by Jaden's guitar strays, Hunter heard Luca come hurling down the stairs. "What's happening?" Luca slipped and impaled himself on the coat rack, his blood slowly dripping down to the flames. "Quickly, Ernesto, call 911 while I handle Bean." There was no answer. "Hunter!" No one answered. Jaden stopped swinging as he stopped feeling impact. In fact, Jaden stopped feeling at all, his skin burnt to the point of ash. Jaden fell limp onto the couch. Bean, still sitting there humping Cameron's now lifeless body, slowly got slower with every hump, until he lay dead to the flames. The house sat in silence for a while until a faint cough came from Luca. "Hello? Is anyone the boom?" The house exploded after the fire reached the water heater in the basement, bursting straight up into Luca, killing him for good this time. As the sun broke over the horizon, the sounds of sirens filled the air, and soon enough, the house was gone completely, and all 10 friends that died. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm amber glow over the placid surface of Fox Lake. Nick strolled along the water's edge, his bony frame silhouetted against the fiery sky. He liked this solitude, the stillness that wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. It was an escape from the chaos of life, with its burdens and harsh realities. Here, he was just another man, a fishing pole in hand, seeking solace in the gentle ripple of water. He found a promising spot, nestled beneath a gnarled old tree, its roots partly submerged. Carefully, he set up his gear, the rhythmic clinking of tackle and the soft lapping of water adding a music that soothed his restless mind. As he cast his line, the lure danced through the air, splashing against the water with a delicate plop. A gentle breeze coaxed the surface into tiny waves, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Minutes melted into hours, and the peaceful ambience wrapped around him like a hug. Nick lost himself in thought, imagining the thrill of reeling in a monster catch. Despite his lean appearance, Nick held dreams that were larger than life. He dreamed of trophies, of stories to be told. The sun finally sank beneath the horizon, leaving traces of twilight shimmering on the water. Half an hour slipped by before a familiar tug yanked his line taut. Nick's heart raced with the thrill of a catch. He worked the rod, reeling in what he believed to be a sizable bass. The calm demeanor of his morning was a stark contrast to the adrenaline coursing through his veins. As the fish neared the surface, glistening scales ignited in the sunlight, its body thrashing against the water's grip. But something felt off, wrong. Instead of the expected brassy flash of a bass, an elongated form broke the surface, jaws gaping wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth glistening like jagged glass. It was no bass. It was a shark, unexpected and terrifying. Panic suddenly gripped Nick's heart as reality shattered. This wasn't some friendly fishing adventure. It was a plunge into a nightmare. The shark lunged, teeth sinking deep into Nick's leg, pulling him into the icy water. His shout for help faded into bubbles as the chill enveloped him, squeezing the breath from his lungs. Pain exploded through his body like fire as the beast thrashed, dragging him into its wrathful domain. Nick's consciousness flickered like a candle in the wind as the creature tore hungrily into his flesh. A gruesome irony playing out before him. He had come seeking solitude and peace, only to be consumed by an insatiable predator. Just as consciousness slipped painfully away, there was an unsettling stillness, the world going black and cold. Nick was still and not breathing. To think a simple fishing trip turned into the end of a life. As the shark ate Nick's lifeless corpse, randomly, darkness shocked him back, frigid air piercing through his body. He gasped, reanimating as if pulled from the depths of death itself. A horrifying revelation struck him. He found himself still in the clutches of the shark, its maw clenching painfully around his torso, the edges of its teeth gnawing even deeper. The agonizing sensation of sinking flesh welcomed him anew back to this living nightmare. With a primal instinct driving him, he thrashed, somehow wrenching his body from the beast's grasp. Blood clouded the water as he surfaced, a desperate gasp tearing from his lips. Trembling, he swam furiously towards the distant shore, each stroke driven by sheer terror. He escaped. As salvation loomed, an enormous shadow darted beneath him. Another fucking shark launched into the world above like a thunderstorm unleashed. Before he could register the threat, it rocketed from beneath, jaws wide, devouring him whole in one sweeping motion. The finality of it stole his breath, snatching the tableau of life from his grasp. Nick's scream faded into oblivion. The lake returned to its serene splendor, a gruesome secret buried beneath the placid surface. This lake, once a refuge, now held a dark truth. Nature's beauty often masked untold horrors, revealing the fragile line between peace and pain. For every fisherman casting a line, a lurking predator awaited, prepared to erase the boundaries of humanity with a single vicious bite. The only lesson? In the face of nature, we remain but pawns, easily consumed by elemental fears that the heart cannot deny. Cameron was deep into his gaming session of Red Dead Redemption 2, lost in the vast, rugged beauty of the game world. The rhythmic sound of gunfire and the distant whinny of a horse punctuated his focus. He had spent countless hours exploring the haunting landscapes, built friendships with outlaws, and made deals with fate itself. But all of that faded into mere pixels when, without so much as a creak from the floorboards, the earthly heaviness of his reality shattered. The wall of his room exploded inward, drywall crumbling, splinters flying, revealing a monstrous face crowned with bristly fur and a maw that reeked of decay. Before Cameron could even process the sight, the bear lunged, all muscle and raw hunger. Its paws crushed the remnants of his safe space like a child tearing through wrapping paper on Christmas morning. Cameron's heart raced as adrenaline surged, but the fear that gripped him left no time for thought. He was just a soft morsel in that moment. The world outside faded as the bear hoisted him toward its gaping mouth. In one swift motion, he was gone, as though someone had hit the pause button on the game, leaving behind only the flickering screen and the dispassionate reflection of his horror etched in the glass. Silence reclaimed the room, smeared with the faintest echo of a single disgusting burp as the bear, pleased with its meal, lumbered away, leaving Cameron's scattered dreams and remnants of terror in a dimly lit room. Steam filled the bathroom, blurring the world outside as Lucas stepped under the shower, washing away the remnants of the day. Suddenly, through the swirling mist on the foggy mirror, the words, "I see you," began to form, each letter dripping with an unsettling chill that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Startled, he recoiled, his foot slipping on a bar of soap, sending him crashing to the tiled floor with a sickening thud, his head striking the edge of the bathtub. As the blood pooled around him, the phrase lingered in the air, the ghostly figure emerging slowly behind the curtain, its ghastly visage grinning in triumph. The haunting had hardly begun when Luca's life came to a jolting end. In that moment, his ultimate fear wasn't the ghost lurking in the shadows, but the eerie silence that followed, filled only by the echo of an empty home, forever left to wonder who would witness the real horror behind those mirrors. The chill of an October night blanketed Nick Chen's backyard as laughter echoed between the trees, where the remnants of autumn leaves shivered underfoot. Flickering orange lights adorned the house, creating shadows that danced on the grass where 19 friends had gathered, each moment punctuated by the fusion of fear and excitement. It was Halloween, after all. 2 weeks before their senior year's end. Hunter leaned back against the wooden deck railing, chuckling as he tossed another handful of candy bars into the fire pit, their wrappers sizzling and then crackling as they ignited. Cameron came over, his cowboy hat slipping off his head as he pointed a finger at him. "Dude, not the candy, what are you doing?" "Just adding some ambiance," Hunter replied, waving him off. Nick Chen, hostess, strolled among the crowd, ensuring everyone had a drink in hand, promising the best party in the neighborhood. Ernesto and CJ challenged each other to a game of beer pong, the table laid out with empty red cups and a slosh of bright liquid. Laughter merged with the music pumping from the speakers, a euphoric cocktail of youthful rebellion and unshackled joy. But as the night warped deeper into darkness, a faint sliver of dread crept along the edges. Neil tilted his head back, guffawing loudly, unaware of the heaviness that seemed to press down on the gathered friends. Michael, the clown of the group, teased Donato about his costume, a half-hearted vampire that made him look more ridiculous than menacing. Meanwhile, Caden and Stu huddled by the bonfire, exchanging ghost stories that peeled back layers of comfortable bravado. "No way! You're telling me the old McCarthy house is actually haunted?" Caden's eyes widened, filled with morbid fascination. "Every Halloween, it's said someone disappears," Stu whispered, casting a sly glance back towards Nick, who was ensuring every drink was filled to the brim. "They say the old lady who lived there never left." Xavier joined them, rolling his eyes. "Give me a break. Ghosts? That's old news. Now vampires? They're the real deal." He shuddered theatrically, earning eye rolls and chuckles. Just then, Jaden stumbled into the light, an unkempt specter, wild-eyed and grinning. He held a half-empty bottle above his head, his careless laughter drawing attention as he lurched toward the girls gathered by the cooler. The atmosphere shifted. What started as laughter had mutated into something darker, more sinister. "Hey, ladies, who wants a drink?" he mused, his slur thick. The girls exchanged looks, concern blooming beneath their costumes. "Back off, Jaden, you're wasted," JT warned, but it was too late. Jaden took their hesitation as an invitation, grabbing an unsuspecting girl in a ghost costume. He leaned in, breath sour with alcohol, whispering something too muffled to hear. Then, with a speed that shocked everyone, he bit into her neck, a savage act that turned eager laughter into screams of horror. The gash widened, her delighted giggles silenced, replaced by a raw, startled gasp. "No! What the hell?" Ryan shouted, lunging forward, but it was as if Jaden had tapped into a primal rush of strength, an energy that coursed through him like a rabid beast. Guys, what's happening? Luca's voice cracked with disbelief, moments lost in blurs of chaos unfolding before them. The girl dropped to the grass, unconscious or worse, while Jaden stood there, a crazed look in his eyes, head bobbing as he surveyed the scene. Panic painted the faces of every friend, some rushing to help the girl while others stumbled backward, fear gripping their insides as the realization of what had just occurred sank in. A dark shadow loomed above them, a horror birthing itself within their midst. Then, one by one, the girls fell prey to Jaden's madness. It wasn't long before he lunged at another friend, combating a swarm of horrified accusations. "Stop! Jaden, you're scaring us!" But he was beyond communication, caught in a spiral of drunken violence, driven by instincts they didn't dare comprehend. JT was the first to give in to fear's raw authority. He grabbed Nick by the arm, attempting to drag him away. "We need to leave now!" But Nick stood frozen, staring, shock twisting his features. As the unsuspecting girls became prey, that crackling laughter and spirited joy of the night faded, leaving an empty void filled only by horror. The remaining friends were trapped in their own backyard, imprisoned by fear, haunted by the vivid imagery of their friend's madness. In his frenzy, Jaden turned his sights on Neil, who raised his hands in self-defense, pleading, "Jaden, please, you're not yourself." But it was as if Jaden didn't hear. He lunged, tap dancing on the thin line between friend and monster. Only moments later, Neil felt the sharp teeth puncture his skin, pain igniting along his neck like wildfire. The intoxication of fear and adrenaline coursing through him dulled the edges of his consciousness. The effects were immediate, debilitating. Neil stumbled backward into the clutches of the chaos erupting around them. What had begun as raucous laughter morphed into panicked screams, the night ripping at the seams as friends turned on each other. Cameron screamed aghast at Neil's response, his footsteps slipping away from the scene, pushing back against the growing panic as Jaden danced amidst friends lost to their own horrified acceptance of an impending doom. They became a savage homage to every horror story they'd ever known, unwittingly stepping into the very nightmare they had assembled to escape. Trapped in a circle of despair, their hysteria escalated, then swiftly began to dwindle as several more succumbed to Jaden's bite, now lurching around drunkenly, eyes glazed, transforming into ghastly reflections of their former selves. The embodiment of fear took shape in their minds, woven into the threads of each emotional bond they once shared, now frayed and torn. Jaden shifted unsteadily, eyeing Cameron with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "Get back! You're not yourself, Jaden." But it was too late. There was no reversing it. The friends' distant connections had become mere echoes, swallowed by madness. "Break the chain!" Xavier shouted. "Don't let any of them touch you." The clarion ring of fear solidified into the fabric of their reality. Yet, one by one, friends slipped into oblivion, mouths contorting, limbs jerking, an eerie mirroring of Jaden himself. Each friend was lost in the rhythm of despair, wearing the shell of who they once were, twisting grotesquely into drunken zombies, clawing for the remaining survivors. The air turned thick with desperation, leaving the remaining few gasping for clarity amidst the shadowy formations of their own manifestations. Friends they loved becoming monstrous echoes, lost within the haze of horror they could no longer understand. Nick, fighting the urge to flee and abandon the horror, turned to Hunter, who had grasped a butcher's knife. the only semblance of hope illuminating the darkness. We have to contain this. We can't let it spread anymore. He glanced at Cameron, his expression mirroring the chaotic nature of the night, pledging an allegiance with the few unturned friends. We fight or we perish. In a twisted turn, the night became a labyrinth of fleeting connections, bathed in terror, caught in an endless web of overwhelming dread. The twisting reality of turning friends into foes, each moment dripping away into the shadows of Halloween night, consumed by fear and inevitable despair. Suddenly, the grip on reality slipped. The fire flickered and dimmed, shadows engulfing the scene like an insatiable void. And just as swiftly as it began, the darkness washed away, revealing an empty street void of lights. Everything had gone silent. Jaden was jolted awake, gasping, realizing the chaos was nothing more than a fevered dream born from underage intoxication. A pair of police officers surrounded him on the ground, their voices cutting through the haze. "Get down! Stop resisting!" As the electric surge of a taser jolted through him, Jaden felt fear crawl under his skin, more potent than any drunken waltz with zombies. He was encased in reality, dazed but acutely feeling the burn of the arrest beneath officer grip. Never had he felt more alone, grappling with his shattered facade of youthful freedom. His mind echoed with a chilling truth. Sometimes the real horror hides, patiently waiting, lurking behind a bottle of alcohol.
Wait, I'm